I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans. And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field. Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We can even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
This is a matchup for the ages. Audi cuts a path straight to the paint, and she serves up a slam dunk. I hope Audi may have the win, but Frank really got the W on that play. That's gotta hurt.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Reaction Time presented by our friends Fareway. I'm Jacqueline Cordova, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Ben Visser. It is officially post Big 12s. Crazy how fast it comes and goes.
It sure is.
Like it's done.
Yep.
They started breaking down the moment Oklahoma State was done celebrating, and I was just like, oh, I forgot how fast they did this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Initial thoughts here as we jump in.
Yeah, initial thoughts. Relatively disappointing.
Yeah.
Iowa State finished in 4th, which is a spot lower than they probably going into it should have. I think.
South Dakota State.
Yeah, South Dakota State had themselves a tournament,
Yeah.
which good for them.
Yeah.
Iowa State did not. Iowa State, by and large, had a pretty rough tournament, unfortunately. Save for Panero Johnson. Even Panero Johnson's tournament, yes, he won a Big 12 title, so that's great and the ultimate goal for him.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that, would you say he wrestled really well?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Like, not when his semifinals match, fantastic.
Semifinals match was phenomenal. Best match he's wrestled maybe all year.
But like the rest of them were just, it was hard. Like he even acknowledged it in that he'd never won matches by a riding time point because he's not a guy who tends to ride a lot.
Nope.
And what was the other one? The stall call?
Stall call and sudden victory.
Yeah, like that's just what weird. Those are like things you would see in like a guy who's like a lower seed who happened to make things like the stars just align for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like Panero Johnson,
Yep.
who you're expecting to go in there and dominate. I think I did double check this. He had one bonus point win, right?
Not this weekend.
No? Am I making it up?
7-3 was his best win.
Okay,
against
I
Team
must have been
Travis.
thinking someone else. Never mind. Yeah, it was just weird to watch him win like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And like the annoying part is, so like, yes, he won, which means he wrestled well enough. But the annoying part is you see that Team Travis match where he gets 2 takedowns relatively easily. And I texted you and Aiden this, like, why not do that 5 times a match? Like, you could count on 2 fingers probably 1, 2 in that Avery Allen match, his first round match where he won on a riding time point, and how many times he shot.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even that, did he take 2 committed shots? I don't know that he did. Like, it was just like, Panero, buddy, we see your ability. We all see it. Your athleticism is darn near unmatched. We see how good you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let it fly. As Dresser says, let's get greedy, string together 5 takedowns and see if he can't win by major decision or tech fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, in that match he won by riding time, he proved that he can ride. I've never seen Panero Johnson ride anybody. So let's get all of your abilities together here and let's go do something special, because he can be special. He won a Big 12 championship. He's wrestled in 2 Big 12 tournaments. Mm-hmm. He's got 2 Big 12 championships. He can be special. Let's put it all together and show it every match. That's what I want to see out of Panero.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Coach was on it. I think it was when I talked to him, gosh, when would it have been? Maybe the first time I talked to him this weekend. I think it was his semifinals win. Or maybe it was, I can't remember now. Regardless, he said that after one of his wins, Dresser, the first thing he said was, you need to score more points. So like, we're all thinking it. We're all feeling it. It's just like, you're just waiting for him to open up. And like we said, that semifinals match, he was phenomenal in that. I had a lot of fun watching him. Like, if that's how he wrestled all weekend, it would have been 10 times more fun and less nerve-wracking.
Yep.
It was a 7-3 win against Teague Travis. So yeah, it was just weird. But I think my biggest takeaway from Pinheiro this weekend is just, I was telling you, it's like his mentality, his physical demeanor, and just like the way he talked all weekend is just so night and day from the Pinheiro last time we did this. And I'm sure you can even reference media availabilities. He's not as like puffed up chest and like, I'm the greatest, I'm gonna go beat every single person because I'm the best. Before his title match and after, he was just like very focused. I could not get him to talk about it. And, you know, when you're trying to get like those really emotional quotes they give after they win and what it means to them, I couldn't get it out of him.
Yep.
I couldn't. It was like when I tried to get David Carr to talk about himself. I could not get him to do it. And he very much was like, I'm really happy to have gotten this. Like, it means a lot to me, but I have to stay focused. And that's something Dresser has always said. Like, I need to keep him focused. I need him to stop like talking such a big game and go focus on doing the talking on the mat. And so I do think it's really interesting to see just the way he's really just changed his approach to everything. Dresser has talked a lot about how he needs to stay focused, right? Like, enjoy the win. You deserve to feel it, but also don't forget there's still more work to be done. Because I'm sure it also haunts Pinheiro looking back at the last time he went to the tournament, right? You become a Big 12 champion, you're a freshman, and then you go to the tournament and you just kind of fall on your face.
Yep.
And now I just don't feel there's as much room for like excuses if he does it again, right? So I'm really hoping that this approach he has this year where he is really focused, where he's really hungry to feel those wins, where when he says, I can't keep winning matches by 1 point, that he's actually going to go and translate that into his wrestling. Because Pinheiro's a really exciting wrestler. Just for some reason, he's really holding himself back there a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because he's worried about getting tired or what it is. But when you're up by 8 points, life gets a lot easier.
I was going to say, imagine how good you'd feel if you were just ahead.
Yeah. So don't have to worry and stress the whole 7 minutes. You do, because otherwise you might end up like, who was it? Cade DeVos from South Dakota State. If you relax even for a half second against a guy like MJ Gaitan,
True.
you're going to get a headlock and get pinned. But we'll talk about that later. I'm very excited for Pinheiro's NCAA tournament because I think it's going to tell us a lot about how much he has, or hopefully not, but hasn't grown. I'd love to see Pinheiro become an All-American, not just because Iowa State fan, but because everything that Pinheiro's gone through, and he has the ability to, like, very clearly can be an All-American. I just want to see him cut loose, let it all loose, let it fly. And Pinheiro's shots are so good and they're so clean. And you talk to him afterward, and it's because, well, he's calculated. And he does take very calculated shots. Like, he makes sure everything is set up right. But let's shoot a little bit more than that. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Just let it fly. And, like, again, don't take dumb shots. Don't take bad shots. But there's more there. We all see it. Dresser sees it. I'm sure Pinheiro sees it. So, good, great. Big 12 champion for him. That's wonderful. Let's get more, which I think is his attitude too. So
I think my favorite thing was that when I talked to him right after he won, he was like, honestly, I'm just so excited that I was able to beat him. And, you know, it's funny because I was looking up stuff for a bunch of other wrestlers. Like, I was watching all the UNI interviews and just kind of watching stuff on Twitter. A lot of guys said that. I think it was, what's the 197 pounder for UNI?
Wyatt Volker.
Yes, I think it was Wyatt that also talked about his win. Like, I feel really good about it, but I'm so glad I was able to get that win over that guy. So definitely a theme across the board, but I hope that it really does lift his confidence in a way that he sees that, yeah, you can let it fly a little bit. And I think in one of our conversations too, he did kind of talk about how it was right after the semifinals where he talked about how he kind of matched his wrestling to who he's wrestling and how he needs to really be better about if he's clearly better than him, he needs to really just lay into him instead of you need to channel David Carr.
Yes.
Catch and release here.
Yep.
Catch and release as many times until you
Win by tech fall.
I was going to say, until you win that match before the 7 minutes are even up.
Yep. No, I'm with you. And that's something I've texted you and Aiden multiple times is Pinheiro wrestles to the level of his opponent. And that's why he's able to beat guys like Colin Realbuto 5-4 with a late takedown, and guys like Teague Travis, really good wrestlers. So he's able to beat them. And then it's also why he only beats guys like Avery Allen 2-1 without a takedown. And again, no offense to Avery Allen, but Pinheiro is much better than a 1 point difference against Avery Allen. So don't wrestle the level of your opponent. Just don't even worry about that. Pretend they are Colin Realbuto. Pretend they are Ridge Lovett from Nebraska. Like, let's get it going.
Yeah. No, but like we said, exciting Big 12, two-time Big 12 champion. And it's also, I know Pinheiro is very much like, don't want to think about it too much. But like, also, let's acknowledge Pinheiro went through a really rough year having to sit out. Dresser brought this up about how, I mean, Pinheiro didn't even know if he would be able to compete again after all of the gambling stuff went down. So, I mean, to be able to go from, a tough tournament and nationals last year, and then you sit out for an entire year. So then suddenly it's like, did I take it for granted? Will I ever do this again? And then you do come back and then you wrestle 3 weights and you do it successfully.
Yep. Yeah. He beat Ja'Cory Teamer. Like he took a shot at Ja'Cory. Ja'Cory did injure his knee in that match, and then Pinheiro took him down. So like we've seen the greatness of Pinheiro Johnson.
Yeah. So he deserves to also celebrate this. I'll celebrate it for him. It's a special story and it's exciting. And I'm excited to see him get that redemption. He very much mentally needs headed into nationals. So I think it'll be really fun to see what he can do. Pinheiro Johnson becoming a Big 12 champion is Dresser's 11th individual Big 12 champion. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then what was the other nugget? He became the 39th two-time conference champion in school history and the first since David Carr.
There you go.
So a little fun stuff there. Where would you like to go from here? Straight into MJ Gaitan?
Let's do it. We mentioned him. Let's go for it.
I would like to say I manifested this because during that match, MJ is down. What was it?
8-2, I think.
Oh gosh, it's in there somewhere. But he was down. I was feeling low. I was like, gosh dang it, MJ, not this again. And in my mind, I said, God, it would be really fun if we got an MJ Gaitan pin. And I made a mental note, I should tweet that. And then I never did because I just got too distracted watching the match and taking photos. And then sure enough, he did it. He did it. I was really happy for MJ. I think he needed it. I think Iowa State needed it. They needed their spirits up because things were feeling a little low Sunday morning. So really glad to see that out of MJ. I think it's been really fun and just it's just a fun experience to see how guys translate. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
Ben tweeted, all MJ Gaitan needs is a head and an arm. And I think it's been really fun to see how he's tightened up his wrestling and how he's become a little more technically sound.
Yep.
But I think as the tournament went on and, he had that really tough loss with Keegan O'Toole, which was expected.
Yep.
But I was like, gosh, how fun would it be for him to be able to feel himself win a match doing his crazy little scrambles. And he did it. And it was really fun. What did you think of MJ's tournament?
I honestly think that he couldn't have had a better tournament. When your first round matchup is against Keegan O'Toole, I'm sorry, but like there's a couple guys in the world that can beat him. And one of the guys wrestled for Iowa State last year, and that's David Carr. So unfortunately for MJ, he's not one of those guys right now. He's not one of the handful of guys that can beat Keegan O'Toole. So he lost by tech fall. That's life. Comes back, beats Carter Schmidt, beats Aiden Ricks boy, I can't pronounce that last name. McElhinney. Sorry, apologies to you. And then his best win of the tournament, in my opinion, was against Cade DeVos with that pin down 8-2. Third period, he's getting ridden, I don't know. And you could see it on the broadcast that he starts trying to whip his arms around, and the broadcaster said, "Oh, that's MJ going for a headlock. That's one of his patented moves." And then he finally gets all the way around, and he gets the head and the arm, gets him in a headlock, and just whips him over. And it's like, "Oh, that's tight. That's tight." And it was. And that's what MJ does. Like you said, his technical wrestling has gotten a lot better. He beat Kate Schmidt 4-2. He beat Aiden, can't pronounce his last name, 15-9. Very good technical wrestling. Didn't rely on a pin to win. Cade DeVos, he gets to prove that he still can pin if he needs to, right? If he's desperate and things are going poorly, hunt the head and the arm and just go for it. Yeah. And that's what he did. Got the pin. Third place match against number 3 seed Gavin Sachs, who he beat last year. Wins that one 6-4. So another technical match. Not one where he needed a pin, not one where he needed a miracle headlock and back points. Just good technical wrestling. So I loved MJ's tournament. Coach Dresser actually shared, I think it was after the tournament, that MJ's knee is not in a good place. Injured it. Did he injure it warming up, or was it in practice the week before?
No, it was when they were down there. Because Dresser said when they woke up Saturday, he was worried if they were even going to be able to wrestle him at all. Yeah. It didn't sound like, I don't think it was earlier in the week.
No, it didn't sound like it.
I was going to say, I tried to find my transcript notes and I couldn't find it. So yeah, which when he told me that, I was so shocked. I was like, what do you mean he wasn't going to compete in the tournament?
Like couldn't move his knee is what Dresser said.
Yes, he kept referencing mobility. He said that in the Keegan O'Toole match, yes, he was definitely like way out of his league on that one, but he also had no mobility is basically what Dresser said in order to even try to like have some defense. Yeah. You know? So yeah, that's shocking. So again, it's like my favorite messaging when you finish third is the toughest guys wrestle for third. Well, MJ Kaitan did it while very injured, it sounds like.
Yep. And hopefully that injury is something that he can get over. Hopefully it's a minor sprain.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about
that. That he can just figure that one out. And I love what Dresser said even before the tournament. MJ Gaitan's not a guy you want to see on your side of the bracket. And I think everyone at the Big 12's just found that out because Keegan O'Toole beats him. Great. Keegan O'Toole is, like I said, really good. And then everyone else has to deal with him. And poor Cade DeVos, man. Like 8-2, cruising to a victory. You're riding him. Suddenly you're on your back fighting for your life.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is, so Carter Schmidt, former Cyclone.
Oh, you're right.
I know.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
When I saw him warming up in the tunnel, I was like, wait a second. Carter?
I thought that name looked familiar.
I know. Yeah, he's at California Baptist now. Unfortunately for him, he had Dean Hamidi in the first round. So he too had a tough one there. But yeah, I know. Former Cyclone. Yeah, I really like MJ. I think he's so fun. I thought it was funny when I talked to him after. He was like, well, he'll definitely never let me get him in a headlock again. Yep. So you kind of have to reveal your bag of tricks, as Dresser has said in the past. But I mean, it was so worth it. It was so, like I said, the mood was just so low, unfortunately. And that pin definitely helped just kind of, okay, we can breathe a little bit after that. So good for MJ, especially because, as I said, I've fallen down several rabbit holes this weekend or this past few days. I found an old quote, which is a good transition into Aiden Riggins. I found a quote from Derek St. John when he talked about just the process of these guys having to flip-flop. So if you don't remember, you didn't realize this, Aiden Riggins and MJ Gaitan switched weights. It was just kind of what they decided to do at the start of the season. And as the season went on, it was kind of clear that it just wasn't working. Poor Aiden was just having zero success. Yep. And I'm curious how MJ felt.
Dresser, like he didn't feel good.
I was going to say, Dresser's talked about how he gets a little more wiggle room with weight, so clearly also felt like shit. Let's just be honest there. And so they flip-flopped him in the middle of the season. And so I found this quote last night, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are the chances I find this? And it was Derek St. John said in a media availability that he felt for those guys. He said, I kind of feel for both of those guys a little bit. You flip-flopped them about halfway through the year. And I know it's better, but I think, and then that's where he says, like, Riggins is going to have way more horsepower at 65 than MJ, whereas MJ will get that horsepower back and be a little freer going up the weight. So then he kind of just talked about how that can, mess with a guy's head. It just kind of messes up what routine you already had. So I think it's fitting that the two go on to wrestle for third place after having different, struggles throughout the season. So Aiden Riggins, I'm sorry I wasn't familiar with your game.
Yeah.
It was truly like in full just exposing myself. When covering the tournament, I'm obviously paying attention to every single guy, but you obviously know which guys have a higher ceiling than others. So I definitely was overlooking Aiden all weekend. Like I was like, every time he was winning his matches, I was like, oh, good. Like he did really well in that one. And especially when it starts to get into chaos mode, when you have 3 guys going at once, you got to pick someone to sacrifice.
Yep.
Like the mats are 4 in a row. I can only be close to 2 of them. And the third one's going to kind of have to be in the rear view mirror there. And depending who was up, I would probably put poor Aiden in third place of what mat I'm going to go. So it'd be like, I'd have Jacob Frost and Cody Chittum and then Aiden. And it'd be like, oh, Aiden's on mat 1 and the others are on 3 and 4. So I am very happy for him to prove everybody wrong, to show that Dresser was totally right. That he was going to get better as the season went on. Because again, tough guys wrestle for third and he did it.
Yep.
He finished fourth.
But wrestled in the third place match. In that third place match, he wrestled number 1 seed Terrell Bearclough, is what they were pronouncing it as. I always thought it was Bearclaw, but apparently it's Bearclough.
I think it is Bearclaw because the announcer kept saying, how did he say MJ Gaitan? MJ Gaitan.
Oh, weird.
He just kept mispronouncing it. And every time I heard MJ's name over the speakers, it just made me chuckle.
Okay. So maybe it is Bearclaw, but both the guys on ESPN were saying Bearclough.
Okay.
Not that important. I mean, it's pretty important. He's number 1 seed. But wrestled him in the third place match, lost 1-0, was in deep on a shot in the first period. It's like, oh my gosh, MJ, or not MJ, Aiden, are you going to finish this? He didn't, which is fine. But like, and we've seen that, right? We've seen Aiden Riggins' ability to get to legs. And against Cooper Voorhees from Wyoming, he beats him 10-7. Against Clayton Ulrey from UNCO, is that Northern Colorado? Has to be. He beats him 11-3. So like against these lower level guys, he gets to his legs and finishes. And I think what we started to see is against these higher ranked guys, he can get to legs and he can finish it sometimes. And that's something I think the coaches have talked about, in that MJ has great attacks. He just needs to string them together, get it to his offense a little bit more. And I think we're starting to see that. Aiden Riggins looked the best this weekend that he has in a Cyclone singlet ever. It was really great to see. Finished 4th, qualified for the NCAAs. I don't know what he does at NCAAs. We'll worry about that next week. But Aiden Riggins had himself a tournament, and I couldn't be happier for the guy.
I know. And he looked so sad when he lost that third place match. And that makes me feel good about him, right? Because it's like, you're not satisfied that you finished 4th and he was the 8 seed.
Yep.
So that
lost to the number 1 guy twice. That was both of his losses was to the number 1 guy.
Like, what are the chances you really have to grind it? And he cut it down. He lost 2-0 the first time he faced him, and then 1-0. So it was, again, so sorry, Aiden Riggins, for doubting you there. But like, yeah, it added to the chaos. So like I said, happy for him. I don't know what I'm excited for when it comes to the national tournament. I think I'm just curious to see how he handles that place, because that's a scary environment.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. And unfortunately for Riggins, he will probably get a very low or high seed, depending on how you view it, somewhere in the high 20s, potentially in the 30s. So he's going to be facing a number 1 through 5 seed in his first match, which will be tough. But if he can, if that same thing happens and he wrestles back on the backside of the tournament, like we said about Will Feldkamp last year, get a couple team points, see what you can do.
Get out there, do the stuff. Because Aiden Riggins had, I think, a major decision win. I think.
Yeah, he did 11-3.
I was going to say, was it his second match of the consolation bracket?
Yep.
Which that's huge for your team. So just go back and look at what it does to the team scoring. Like this is when those one-off situations really, really count. So that's probably who I was thinking of when I was looking at them who bonused. So good for him. It's good to have guys who can surprise you a little bit. Quickly thinking through. Think of things from this weekend that I'm going to say surprised you, and Evan Frost is going to be the first thing you say. So let's just go there. Let's go there.
Let's go Evan Frost. Evan Frost finished in 7th place as the number 1 seed. Did not automatically qualify for the NCAAs. They did release the at-larges, and he did get an at-large spot. Him and Daniel Herrera. Shout out to Daniel Herrera, also gotten an at-large. We'll get to Herrera here soon, I'm sure. But yeah, Evan, so he did qualify, so that's good. But yeah, not a good weekend for him.
But he didn't earn an automatic.
Yeah, did not earn an automatic qualifying spot.
That was crazy.
That's nuts. Won his first match by major decision, 17 to 4. I was like, oh, he's on it. And then lost to Cade Moore from Missouri, the number 8 seed, 20-6. Darn near a tech fall. And he didn't. That was, he looked, which is, okay. I'm a huge fan of Evan Frost.
Yeah.
He looked lost in that match.
Yeah.
Like he just
didn't look
head
himself.
Was spinning, his eyes, like it just didn't look right. St. John did say after the day or after that session that he hurt his hamstring at some point. I don't think it was during that match. It was probably during training. So again, another injury. What's another injury for this year?
Trigger warning.
But like it just didn't look right. And then he lost. He won his next match by major decision, 14-3. It's like, okay, he's back. And then he lost to Julian Farber 14-3 or 14-13. And that one hurt because he was right there. He gave up, I think it was like 3 takedowns in the first period. It's like, Evan, so something, and it probably was his hamstring, right? Because if you're trying to defend a shot, you need your hamstring for that.
Yeah.
Like you just do. But so hopefully you get back healthy. I'm hoping it is just the hamstring and it wasn't anything more than that. Because this is not the Evan Frost that we are accustomed to. He lost 2 matches all year, 2-3 matches. He's on a 12-match winning streak coming into this. He was wrestling as well as anyone in the country. So I don't think all is lost for Evan Frost. No. The world isn't ending. He still has NCAAs to go through. Now this will hurt his seating for NCAAs, which is annoying. But I think Evan is good enough to where the seating doesn't quite matter as much. And really, assuming he's healthy enough for the NCAAs, whoever draws him is going to be pissed.
They should be.
It's like, what the hell? This is a guy who should have been a number 3 seed at NCAAs, and I'm wrestling him as a 10 seed. Like, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? So, that assumes that Evan is feeling better, which I hope he is because we've seen how good he can be. He's a All-American last year as a freshman, and he clearly has that ability again this year. Again, he was quite clearly the number 3 guy in the country going into this, and we could make arguments that he was a national title contender. So if he's healthy, he's still at that level. It's just a matter of whether or not that hamstring is going to be an issue or not.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with sports, right? And especially wrestling. Dresser said it in availability, how the only thing you can feel sure about is that if you feel like crap, your opponents also feel like crap because these guys take such a beating all season. So it just seems like maybe Evan was a little more fortunate in that he hasn't had to. And which actually, I think that's exactly what they said. I think they said that I think St. John said that this was Evan's first injury of the season. So he unfortunately had to learn how to wrestle through an injury that maybe other guys are more used to, right? Which just sucks. It's one of those things in athletics where you just kind of you swing one way or the other when it comes to injuries, right? And unfortunate timing, of course, but I don't think people should let them spiral
Yeah.
Because we saw a lot of spiraling. And I think it's fair to spiral. I definitely felt that way. Being there, watching them just keep losing in moments where you're like, God, they should have won that by XYZ.
Yep.
But I mean, if it's just because he's injured for the first time and he's still young and it was something he had to adjust to, and maybe it was kind of like learning how to walk again for a hot second, then okay.
Yeah.
I prefer it be that than to say, oh, well, we just overestimated his ability to win matches. You know what I mean? Like, he's fine.
And I'd prefer it happen now than at NCAAs.
Yes. So I think another surprise of the weekend was Cody Chittum.
Yep.
That, let me back up for a second. Being at the tournament, I think, is really fun in that I get to see little things that you don't really get to see. So, like, I was going to bring this up. Friday night, the way things work out, I tweeted this. Friday night, I happened to meet the NDSU parents of the 133-pounder.
Mm-hmm.
Evan and Jacob Schwam and I said, clearly just jinxed the whole weekend. But I was so confident talking about Evan Friday night when I meet these parents. And they're like, we're all Berwick. His last name's Berwick. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, our kid's the 5th seed. He's a good competitor or whatever. And I was like, yeah. Evan Frost, though. So then it's just like, dang, crazy how the tournament can just go completely flip on its head. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the kid I was doubting Friday night is in the championship match and Evan's in the stands.
Yep.
So just weird how that happens. But going back into Chittum, after Pinheiro won, I went to go over to where Andy sits, the SID, so that we could do interviews with Pinheiro and stuff. So I'm waiting, and I look over to the side. Cody Chittum sitting in the stands. Cody was sitting watching the 157-pound match. And you can just see it in his face. Like, just the defeat. Like, you just see it. Just slowly but surely through the weekend, through his facial expressions, you could just see how much this was weighing and eating at him. And you could just tell he was just miserable from that experience of just not meeting, your seating expectations, your coach's expectations, and probably your own expectations. Mm-hmm. So I think Cody Chittum's weekend is what stung the most for me because I have no explanation to give as to why. Mm-hmm. Coach alluded to, he just needs to get his head right. Yep. It's kind of a big mental thing with him. Maybe it could have also been the little details leading up to this weekend that just maybe weren't as perfect as they should have been. He won his first match 13-3, and he looked really good. Yeah. Like in that match, I was like, oh, he's in the zone. He's going to be a terror.
Yep.
And then he goes on. He wins in the quarters, 9-0, takes care of business. Like I said, day one, he looked great. And then in the semifinals, he goes and loses to Kobe Siebrecht, who used to be at Iowa, if you recognize the name, who rocked Jason Kreiser. Mm-hmm. I have a photo hanging in my cubicle at work of them like literally in the middle of the air as Kobe Siebrecht just body slams him. And Kobe Siebrecht looked really freaking good in that match. I felt like he just like mangled him.
Yep. And Chittum beat him earlier this year.
That's why I wasn't even Kobe worried. I was like, oh, easy work. But then he goes and loses 12-4. Mm-hmm. So not only does he lose, but he gives up bonus points.
Yep.
And this is a team you're directly in competition with in the team race, which just, what a bad taste in your mouth. And then you go into the consolation round. And I said this in the media room. What kind of special hell does it have to be that not only have you just thrown yourself in the back of the bracket, but now you have to have a rematch with Ryder Downey, who you finally avenged, and now you have to go and beat him so that you can try and compete for third.
Yep.
And then you lose to him.
Yep. Because of a boneheaded mistake.
Yeah, that was
putting both of his boots in after getting a takedown. As soon as he's like, Cody, what are you doing? And I'm sure Dress had the same reaction because after the match, he's like, he just needs to be smarter. You can't throw both your boots in when there's 30 seconds left. Like, you're not trying to work for a turn or anything here. You're just trying to ride him. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he did, I'm like, no. And sure enough, got the reversal, rode him out. I'm like, Cody, and I'm sure he knows this. I'm not telling Cody anything he doesn't know. I'm sure he was frustrated with himself. But it's like, oh, you had it. You had it right there. And then I think, like you said, it was just a mental thing after that. He loses the 5th place match 4-3 against Jared Hill from Wyoming, which Cody Chittum should not lose that match in any world. So I think he just, after the Downey match, he was just down on himself. And
yeah,
I mean, you hear about it, guys just kind of, nah, I'm done.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt watching him in that 5th place match.
Yeah.
And like I said, you just watched his demeanor change as the weekend went on. It just it just looked like it broke him. I don't know that because I didn't talk to him. But just from watching him from the side, it hurt me as someone who I have so much empathy watching these guys as they start to lose. Like I tweeted, once you hit that Saturday night, guys start to cry.
Yep.
You're finding guys in the back hallway, under the stairs, either talking to their coaches or by themselves, and you just watch how it breaks them. And some guys thrive in it, and some guys unfortunately crumble in it. And I would be curious to hear what Cody Chittum has to say about himself, just because I have an idea of what Dresser's going to say.
Yep.
But I would love to know, like, what is going through Cody's head. What was going through your head when you're sitting watching the championship match you were supposed to be in, you know? So it's a learning experience, unfortunately, a really hard one you have to go through before you have to go and perform the best you can.
And that's what he needs to take it as, too, because NCAAs, he could still finish really well.
I was going to say,
he still has an opportunity to get this bad taste out of his mouth and perform well at NCAAs. But if he takes this with him and keeps what happened the last 3 matches, it's not going to go well. So he needs to get his mind right. He needs to get back on it, and he needs to show the Cody Chittum he was for most of the year and those first 2 matches of Big 12s. He can't, and if he does do it as NCAAs, he can't let it spiral. He needs to stay mentally tough, do what David Carr did when David Carr lost somehow in that first round match. Wrestle back for 3rd. Like, that was, we've seen David Carr win 2 national championships. Okay, and this last one, the last one he won, was the most impressive wrestling I've ever seen in my life. But besides that, David Carr wrestling back for 3rd was so incredibly impressive because he had to go through a lot of really good guys to get back to 3rd. Like, he was incredible wrestling, incredible mental toughness from him. So if Cody does end up losing at NCAAs, which at some point I'm guessing he will, adopt a David Carr mindset and keep trucking. Don't feel sorry for yourself. And I don't know if that's what Cody was doing. I don't know if he felt sorry for himself. I don't know what happened. But I know Cody's a better wrestler than to lose 3 straight matches. So something happened that happened. So stay mentally tough, get after it. Don't feel sorry for yourself, and wrestle back to the best of your abilities.
I agree. And the good thing, the positive takeaway for Evan and Cody is that they weren't the only 1 seeds who found themselves in the back of the bracket. And I'm not even talking about Big 12s. I'm talking across the sport. Every time I'd get on Twitter to double check things going on around the country, I heard there was a bunch of upsets at the Big Tens, and a lot of guys were fighting for at-large bids that shouldn't have been. So that's a good thing. You're not the only 1 seed in the country who went and maybe had some slip-ups. So, but I mean, that also makes the sport fun. It just sucks when you're covering and rooting for a team you want to wrestle their seed. So my other favorite part of this weekend, other than watching MJ get a pin, Pinheiro win, Daniel Herrera.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That freshman, he got an at-large bid at a time when people are like, I don't know that he deserves it. There's all these other guys over here, blah, blah, blah. And Daniel went, I think he had such a good weekend.
Great weekend.
I know his losses really hurt him. All gas, no, what is it? Breakfast? Whatever. Yeah. Posted this meme of a photo of Dresser. He's doing, it's like his, what would you call it?
Licking his chops.
Yeah, he gets this like grin sometimes when they win. And it says, oh yeah, Peanut is headed to Philly. If you don't know, Daniel Herrera's nickname is Peanut. He just had such a good weekend. I know I got that picture of him just so depressed when he lost in the semifinals.
Yep.
And which good. You should be sad. That sucks. You were so close. But he went and battled his way in the back of the bracket. I was so happy to see him beat Daniel Mora.
Me too.
I wanted him to have that. I wanted him to feel himself beat someone who had beat him earlier in the season. And Juan Mora, so sorry, Juan, also was having a good tournament. He beat, who was it? It was someone really good because I watched him win it and he just lost his mind. I'll have to pull up the heavyweight brackets. But regardless, Daniel went and proved himself. He is a freshman that people were probably overlooking. I'm sure some people are like, yeah, he's having a good season. But he went and he had a pin in there.
He had 2 pins. For his first 2 matches were pins. Yeah.
It's so rare to see big guys like him get pins. You see, Wyatt Hendrickson's known for pinning as a heavyweight. That's it.
Yep. Pretty much.
And then you have Daniel Herrera, who's like, nope, I'm going to go and get 2.
Yep. Yeah, the first one was against Andrew Blackburn Forrest, which good for him. Forrest is not very good. But his second one was against number 3 seed Lance Runyon, who in the duel in Cedar Rapids, Herrera won that match. So I was like, okay, Herrera can win, but it took a takedown late in the 3rd period. It was on Lance Runyon's own shot, so Herrera just defended it really well and used his weight to, crush him and get a takedown. But this one is like, oh no, Herrera's out for blood. Like that was super impressive. And then, his match against Colton Schultz, lost that one 4-1. That's life. Colton Schultz will be an Olympian at some point in Greco-Roman, so it is what it is. But then, to wrestle back, finish 5th, like you said, beat Juan Mora 5-3, guy he lost to. Really, really impressive weekend from a true freshman. A true freshman, a 19-year-old. I should ask Dresser this, but I'm guessing he would say heavyweight is among the harder weights to wrestle as a true freshman, because Matt Campbell always said that offensive line is the toughest position to play as a true freshman, because you're going against other guys who are 300 pounds and full-grown men. When you're 19 years old, you're not fully grown yet.
Yeah.
So Herrera's out here going against fully grown men as a true freshman, and he found a way to earn an NCAA allocation or an NCAA qualifying spot at large. Is just so impressive.
Yeah, I'm so excited for him. I think it's just really exciting when you hear about how he used to eat fast food like 3 times a day, and he just was like, what was it, like 30, 40 pounds heavier?
Yeah.
And now he got thrown into the gauntlet because obviously no one thought Younger Bastida wasn't going to compete this year. And this heavyweight class is stacked. They are very tough, and it's very difficult when you get up in the trenches of Wyatt Hendrickson and Colton Schultz and all those guys. And for him to go and steal a bid like that, I love that for him. I really, really do. I'm curious who the other ones were. I should look that up. Who he got an at-large over, but he worked so hard this weekend, and it was really exciting to watch.
Yep, it was.
Because
phenomenal weekend.
19. He's literally learning how to live on his own for the first time. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed watching him compete. And like I said, it just means a little something extra when you get to go do it against guys who beat you. So, and I mean, beating you and I feels good.
Yeah.
Obviously. So. Any other Cyclones we would like to talk? Evan Bachman finished in 6th, but unfortunately did get injured in that Parker Kaizen match in the semifinals. No updates.
No updates. That one, not ideal. Another injury. Kyson Tarakina went 0-2. Oh,
I guess, we could talk about that. But
that's all I need to say. His season as a Cyclone, his career as a Cyclone is done. He had an opportunity to be great, and unfortunately never materialized for him. And then Nate Schoen had a pretty decent tournament, I think, honestly, all things considered. For a guy who's filling in for someone who left the program, Nate Schoen did well. He finished 6th, got some good wins.
You got a pin?
Got a pin, yeah. So I can't complain about Nate Schoen's tournament.
No, not at all. I like I've said before, I think he's fun because he just kind of throws it out there and he just kind of really fearless, doesn't really think too much. I will say Evan was limping to the podium. I did not feel great about that.
Yeah.
So we'll have to ask
Evan
Strasser.
Bachman.
Sorry, Evan Bachman, not Evan Frost. Evan Bachman.
Yeah.
So I did not love that. Well, we'll definitely ask Strasser when we talk to them before they leave for Philly, but he's also a senior, so I'd hate to see him go out like that. So we'll have to see how
I'm sure he wrestles in Philly. We'll see. I'm sure his knee will be heavily bandaged, and we'll see what happens. But
yeah. So yeah, officially NCAA qualifiers for the Cyclones are Evan Frost, Jacob Frost, Panero Johnson, Cody Chittum, Aiden Riggins, MJ Gaitan, Evan Bachman, and Daniel Herrera.
yeah, so 8 out of the 10.
8 out of the 10.
Only 2 that aren't are Kyson Terrakeen, who didn't wrestle half the season, and Nate Schoen, who didn't wrestle half the season. So
Yeah.
I would say, as far as qualifier goes, great weekend for Iowa State. You got 8 qualified. As far as actual tournament results go, a little bit disappointing.
Yep. And did you know or feel that South Dakota State was going to be that good?
So, like, when
Did
they
I
wrestled in
overthink
the
them?
dual meet, South Dakota State was ranked ahead of Iowa State. So, like,
Yeah.
I knew they were good. I just figured Iowa State had a better tournament team, which I think is the case. I still think that. But South Dakota State had a great weekend, and Iowa State had 2 number 1 seeds that finished outside the top 5. So, I think if you get those 2 1 seeds wrestling how we know they can, the results are a lot different.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I felt like every time I'd look over to see who else is wrestling, and I'd see the blue singlet, and then it'd be an orange singlet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, I've shared this in the past. Obviously, Oklahoma State fans outnumber everybody. Man, it sucks when they just pin everyone. It just sucks. Which is why I took that video. I shared a video on Twitter that kind of shows you, it was, I think ironically during Kyson's match, maybe. I was sitting at the end of the 4 mats, and I wanted to just show what it looks like as you're watching all the action happen at the same time. Everybody's screaming. I would love to know, I'm sure wrestlers will say, oh, I zone it out. I don't even hear it. But I can't even imagine trying to focus on my match, my referees, and then you just hear the freaking OSU crowd just lose their minds because 2 mats down, someone's getting pinned. So it was, I felt there was lower attendance this year. So I'm curious what the numbers look like.
I actually think I saw a tweet that the finals were the most well-attended finals.
There was a lot for the finals.
Yeah,
it kind of just felt it felt like Saturday wasn't as full as I had felt it the year
That
prior.
could be. Yeah.
So, but maybe it also had to do that it was John Smith last year. I don't know. Whatever. But still a great experience. Love Tulsa. I will say, if I remove the Iowa State glasses, this is one of my favorite finals I've been part of in terms of just like experiencing it, just because I have been fortunate in that there's been several Cyclones. And whereas this season, once Panero was done, by Keegan O'Toole, I had everything out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Aiden's pulled up some information. It says total, it's a record. Wow. Then I must be on crack. Set a conference record with a total attendance of 21,309 fans over the weekend. And then the Big 12 surpassed its previous record of 19,892 at the venue in 2019. Maybe I definitely had my Iowa State glasses on last year, and I was like, oh, this is great. Since Iowa State was winning all weekend.
And that might be why that the tournament wasn't as well attended. Oklahoma State wasn't a factor last year.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know. Overall, still had a good time. I think I was going to say, how do I want to go about this? Aiden, let's pull up the video. Obviously, for wrestling fans, there was controversy over the weekend. I'll paint this picture. I walk into the arena. I'm a little later than usual, unfortunately. I usually get there like an hour before, and I was about 30 minutes before. And I walk in and I go straight to Andy, because that's usually my routine, is just check in with Andy before anything. And you could just tell something was going on. Zeke Smith from Arizona State was like...
Zeke Jones.
I'm thinking of Brian Smith. He's who
We'll get there.
I'm just going
We'll
to say,
get to
I'm going to
Brian
list him next. Zeke Jones is freaking out. he's like power walking around, he's got a sassy look on his face and it's like power walking. And then you got a dresser and he has that like really like just angry look on his face, got his glasses on. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, apparently some stuff went down during weigh-ins, and I did ask Dresser about it. It was funny because it was like, there was like an awkward like silence of, are we done asking him questions? I'm like, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to ask.
Nope.
So Aiden, if you could please pull up the video of Dresser's response when I asked him to give insight into what was going on at the Big 12 Saturday morning situation this morning.
Just disappointed in, nobody wants anybody to sit out, but, if this was the NCAA tournament, there would have been 2 or 3 wrestlers that would not have wrestled because the NCAA wouldn't have put up with the hooey that went on this morning. All right, so there's policies and there's procedures that you follow. So I hope all those guys learn because they got a freebie today. Because if they pull that in Philadelphia, they'll be watching. They will definitely be watching. But just the fact that they were eliminated and then they were put back in, I could go on and on. I'm not going to say what I think really happened, but there was some shenanigans pulled in the back room. So
were the coaches told that they were disqualified and then it was reversed?
We weren't told anything all day long. All right, nothing about what was going on, communication, nothing.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
Candid man.
You will get his full unfiltered thoughts almost all of the time.
Yeah. So the rumor mill started, there was 3 guys, and then it was 3 OSU guys, and then it was, no, it's actually just 2, and then it was, there's an OU guy involved. And so it was all over the place. And unfortunately, it was right when the tournament started. So I think that didn't help other coaches, right? Because they're trying to understand what is going on, and that wasn't happening. And so I think, as Dresser said, there was no communication to them, because what it sounds like is whenever these meetings happen to discuss the situation, they happen without involving anyone else. It was strictly whomever within the Big 12 conference, and I assume coaches involved whose wrestlers were the ones that broke the rules. And so for context, again, a lot of things going around is that 2 guys during weigh-ins did not follow proper procedure. It was like someone was sitting on an exercise bike, and then there was something about someone cut their underwear band, which you're not supposed to do.
Yep. Very clearly written in the rule book that it's not allowed.
And in the rule book, it says, and it's like Article 15, it says reporting for medical examination and weigh-ins. At the scheduled time for medical examination and weigh-ins, all wrestlers who wish to compete shall present themselves properly groomed in a suitable undergarment and not be engaged in any weight loss activity. The penalty for not arriving at the medical examination / weigh-in area at the prescribed time is a disqualification of the competitor. So people were alluding to, not only was someone sitting on a bike, but then they were like delaying it. So they were delaying their weigh-in time because they were
cutting weight.
Yeah. And so then the other part of the rule book that was also making the coaches upset is that in section 22, it says for tournaments and pool / round robin events, there's a committee and administration. So it says all tournaments and pool / round robin events should have a tournament committee designated before the start of competition. This committee should consist of at least 3 members and should have the following minimum duties: A, administration of the event, and B, arbitration of all non-match related disputes. So basically, I think when they reference that, it's no committee was involved.
Yep.
No neutral party was involved. It was just someone within the Big 12 conference and the
made
coaches.
A decision.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, of course, there's a million rumors going around because naturally the Big 12 isn't giving any information. No statement was put out, which I think I find that part of all of it in the end also very, egregious.
It was a huge issue. It was a huge issue on ESPN. They were saying when this was all happening, like, there's things going on. We don't know what it is. We can't really talk about it, but there's things going on in the back hall right now. Matches are being delayed, because when I was watching on ESPN Plus that first day, it took them forever to get Cleveland Belton, an OU guy, on the map because he was one of those guys that was wrapped up in it, according to the guys on ESPN. So, like, we can't get into it. We don't know what's actually happening. but there's the potential of like 3 or 4 guys not being able to wrestle. So like that was being said on ESPN. When that starts, in my opinion, the Big 12 needs to come out with a statement about what's happening and why. Because if you're going to own your decision of let everybody wrestle, tell us why.
Yeah.
Because right now, if we listen to Kevin Dresser, if we listen to other reports that have been reported, it sure sounds like some rules were broken. And we've seen rules get broken in the past. We've seen it at the highest level. Jaden Cox in, I think it was 2020, it was supposed to be the 2020 Olympics, I think it was 2021 because of COVID. When he was a gold medal favorite, missed weigh-ins, he was disqualified. So if we're seeing at the highest level, which is what we should aspire to, why is, assuming this all happened, which it sounds like it did, why are we tolerating this at this level?
So I was looking at Seth Duckworth's Twitter. He was on the podcast 2 seasons ago. Great guy, love him. He covers wrestling within the state of Iowa, within the state of Oklahoma. And I just remembered he put out a video. Wish I could watch it. They're a subscription service, and he apparently spoke with David Taylor about. Is it Tegan? How's that?
Tegan Jameson?
Tegan Jameson.
Tegan Jameson, one of the two.
How do you say
I
his
don't
name? So I'm curious what he had to say about that, because let me bring up this tweet. So Seth put out that the weigh-in deal at Big 12 is going to end up being the equivalent to Deflategate for the NFL. There's going to be a big ruckus about it, but ultimately nothing will happen, and OSU will win the tournament by a lot. I'm sure OSU probably would have had things gone the way they were supposed to, just because of how dominant their other guys are. And like I said, they were pinning everyone. So like they were going to have the points, I'm sure.
Well, they wouldn't have, because Tegan Jameson won. He got 17 team points, and they only beat UNI by like, what was it, 5 team points?
Oh, geez. Okay.
So UNI would have won. If Tegan Jameson was out, UNI would have won 4 team points.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Aiden. Aiden pulled up the team points. And the final team standings, if you hadn't seen them, Oklahoma State finished with 153.5 points, and Northern Iowa finished with 149.5. I think if you go on Twitter, Oklahoma State fans were very angry, of course, about everybody holding the situation accountable. And they were saying why are we trying to punish kids? Like, why are we trying to keep them from competing? I found one of the comments really funny. I'm trying to find it. Someone was like, since when does Dresser not have something to say? Or something. Where was it? Oh gosh, I don't know where it is now. It was in one of Seth's responses, but people were just like, why are we going to focus on eliminating these kids? The matter of fact is, these guys have been wrestling for how long? How many weigh-ins have you sat in? You know all the rules. Your coaches know the rules. There's no gray area here.
No.
We're not talking about...
And these aren't kids. Let's be very clear about that.
No, these are grown adult men who know the rules, who have gone through weigh-ins for several years, who mimic weigh-ins in practices. How many times Dresser's entire training up until Big 12 involves simulations, which I know involves going through weigh-ins.
Yep.
So to make this argument and say oh, why are we trying to punish kids? Why aren't the kids following the rules?
Yep.
And this whole argument of, oh, you wouldn't say that if it was your team's, if it was whoever you're supporting involved in the situation. But I would, though.
Yep, 1,000%.
Sure, I'd be like, oh, dang, this sucks. But if you broke the rule, then you deal with the consequences. Yep. You look back at the gambling situation, right? And it was one of those where it was like, God, I am broken for you guys, because I really would like all of you to be able to wrestle. But also at the same time, the rule was broken. So
yeah, Jackie and I didn't come on this podcast begging for Panero Johnson to be reinstated.
No.
We knew he broke the rules. Now, luckily, the charges got dropped and the NCAA gave him his year back, so we didn't have to do that. But I think it's the silliest argument you could make. If it's your guy, no, let's have accountability here.
Yeah.
If they're student athletes and they're collegiate athletes and the whole goal is to make men out of them and whatever else coaches say in that, then let's have accountability for their actions.
Yeah.
Actions have consequences, and let them deal with it.
Well, and then it just sends a
And if
ripple
they are
effect.
kids, then they can learn from it. If they are kids, they can learn from that and be like, oh, I can't do this in the future. And then they have the rest of their lives to learn from that situation. The worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is to let them get away with it and think they can do it again.
Yep. And unfortunately, like I said, the Big 12 has not said anything, and they're not going to probably at this point. And so like there's no like named on the records. There was a lot of names being thrown around. Like I said, it was just, for sure to know you guy and an OSU guy. Which ones? I mean, OU's is pretty clear. You said they said it on the broadcast.
Yeah, Cleveland
The
Belton.
OSU guy, I never actually heard like a definitive, like, yeah, it was this kid. But the thing is, people can get mad. I saw the guy, it was like, you're just going off of Twitter rumors. No, this was happening at the tournament.
Yep.
Like, there were
coaches screaming and running.
There were coaches at the weigh-in who witnessed it. I spoke with other people who were present at the weigh-ins who also witnessed it. Like, this wasn't this is a witch hunt. No, this was pretty black and white. There was a rule broken, conversations happened where the disqualification was taken back and they got to compete. And again, not to single Seth out, but Seth is the one of the bigger Twitter names who went on to try and make the point of, well, this hurts the sport.
It does not.
I think
hurting the sport is letting the guys continue to wrestle.
Because I was sitting when a coach was making the point of, what if it had been a different colored singlet? And I agree. What if it was a Northern Colorado kid who did it, just one Northern Colorado kid? They would have disqualified him immediately. The news would have traveled through the tournament and the day would have gone about.
No one would have cared.
No.
We would have been like, oh, why did he do that?
Dang,
We would have gone
that
on with our
sucks.
lives.
But because it's Oklahoma State, I think it definitely very much influenced the decision. And then again, like, there's just a million rumors going around about who was involved. And by the end of the tournament, the rumor had started that John Smith was involved in the conversations. And honestly, that's the least surprising thing I've heard about it. Of course, John Smith is involved in it. Like, of course, I watched that man charge around that place at other years, angry about other things. Like, you don't think he somehow was pulled into these conversations? At the end of the day, I think it set a precedent.
A very bad one.
And then it just proceeded to keep popping up. Well, why is you and I going to get called for whomever reached for the challenge brick, I guess, on Matt's side, in the heat of the moment when the match was over and decided? Mm-hmm. Why does that matter? But kids can go and not get disqualified for breaking rules. Or
MJ Gatan spiking his headgear. Why is that a reduction of team points? Like, where you got guys cutting their underwear off so they can make weight. They didn't cut their underwear off, allegedly. They cut the band of their underwear off.
And it would be nice if there was details to work off of, or even just a statement of, hey, here's why we felt this was the best decision.
Yep. There needs to be a statement. I think the Big 12 has failed pretty big in this by not releasing a statement, because we all know it happened at this point.
Yes.
We know something happened.
Regardless of who was in the room, regardless of, like, ultimately the decision, if you're going to make it, back it up when it's this big of a rule. Because we're not talking about the examples we've given. We're not talking about something that happened in the heat of a moment, or poor officiating, or something that has room for judgment. It's pretty black and white. It's in the rule book. I don't even know why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think Oklahoma State fans being upset that people are upset about it is just comical.
It's silliness.
Because imagine if Dresser did that. Like, imagine if Dresser somehow had two guys get away with getting disqualified. I mean, they would have made such a huge deal about it, even though Iowa State probably wouldn't have beat them, right?
Yeah.
Because I think back to, what was it, like the Cyclone Open or something, when people were harping on Dresser about, it was Marcus
Coleman. The last
Coleman.
chance open.
Yes, the last chance open, right?
Yep.
How long did people string that along?
Years.
How long were people mad at him? Like, Dresser literally went on Flow Wrestling Live to address the whole thing. And am I remembering right?
Yeah.
The rules changed.
Yep.
So let's let's just like call it as it is. If you're an Oklahoma State fan and you just want to say, well, my team wasn't impacted by this, so I don't care if they broke the rules or not, then fine. I can see why you would say that. But to pretend this decision wasn't influenced because of what color singlet it was is ridiculous. So, but it was chaos out there.
Yep.
I will say a funny thing to to change the subject is obviously everyone's in the heat of the moment. Something funny I heard Dresser say during the weekend was he was angry at some officiating and he just looked like he was ready to hurt someone. And he proceeds to yell, "Grow some balls," and then runs opposite direction. Thought that was pretty funny.
That's phenomenal.
I was like, how many times do you hear Dresser yelling like that?
Yeah, not often.
It was good. It was fun. Well, this was a lot longer than I anticipated. I'm sure Aiden's mad at us.
Yeah, I could deal with it. Sorry, Aiden. We didn't even get to Keegan O'Toole and Dean Amity.
I know. That was such a great...
I still don't pronounce his last name. Sorry, Dean.
It was such a wonderful match. I love Keegan O'Toole. I've always been a big fan of his wrestling. And it was the moment we saw the brackets, I was like, God, let's really hope those two end up in the finals. And they did. I hope they end up in the finals again at Nationals because they are very good. Very,
fun
very
to
good.
watch.
It was a really fun match. And then the Wyatt Hendrickson, Colton Schultz match was really fun to watch because Colton Schultz had more action than I've seen all season in like the first period.
Yeah.
It seems like Hendrickson is battling something in his arm.
Yeah.
So that obviously definitely helped Colton Schultz. Unfortunately, still lost. But I had fun watching it. I know Iowa State fans feel some type of way about Colton Schultz.
I like Colton Schultz.
I really like Colton Schultz, and I really like Arizona State. So I had fun watching that. It was just, like I said, it was really fun to be able to watch matches, really good matches for once, because all I do is run around like a chicken with my head cut off. So I just stood on the side. I sat for the heavyweight match.
Oh, nice.
I sat on the floor in the seats they set up for fans. So of course, Parker Kutkeisen. I was a little nervous watching that just because I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just a weekend of good wrestling for a lot of my favorite wrestlers in college wrestling outside of Iowa State, of course. So I'm excited for nationals. I think it's going to be a really good tournament.
Yep.
Just in general, when you think of the sport of wrestling. I will say I'm really sad about the heavyweight class that's about to leave.
Yep. Well, it's going to be younger after that.
It's going to be the younger Bastida show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're losing Gable, you're losing Greg Kirkfleet, you're losing Colton Schultz. Gosh, my mouth is getting dry. We're talking so much. And who's the fourth one?
Wyatt Hendrickson.
Yeah. So I'm sad about it. They're just all such talented wrestlers. But good tournament. Oklahoma State won. We saw that. We knew that was coming. I saw someone rallying on Twitter for Doug Schwab to win National Wrestling Coach of the Year. I think he deserves it.
I won't say no to that.
I think
if we're over Cale Sanderson, if we have Cale Sanderson fatigue, yes, Doug Schwab deserves it. If we don't have Cale Sanderson fatigue yet, he should get it. If we're being honest, if we're giving the award to the best coach, Cale Sanderson gets it.
The best coach in.
But if we have fatigue, yes, I'm all for Doug Schwab getting it.
Well, and I think a tangent for another day, but truly just in a quick hit thought, Doug Schwab has done so much with a team with probably like no NIL money.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, like I've never asked Doug Schwab about his NIL situation, but just from what we know of how the sport of wrestling is structured outside of the big schools, it is difficult out there to get money. So like, I'm going to assume that Doug Schwab probably doesn't have millions of dollars like Iowa spent on those 3-4 guys to go and have an underwhelming tournament. Wanted to drop that in there. Like he created a championship level team in the authentic way, the way they used to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And these guys, Parker Kutkeisen probably could have also left and made millions of dollars.
Million.
Yeah. Because he's so talented. And he didn't. He put together such a loyal and talented team just by culture and just being a good coach. Like, I think he deserves it. I really do. And it was upsetting to see them have to finish second. It would have been really fun.
Very fun to see him
if they
first.
forced a tie or just outright beat Oklahoma State. But shout out to UNI. They had a really good weekend. I know UNI and Iowa State fans are no longer cordial, which makes sense. Shout out to the UNI burner who was tweeting at me all weekend. I didn't really understand that, as I've always been very supportive of UNI, but neither here nor there. Brackets for the national tournament will have come out Wednesday night. Aiden has given his blessing to let Ben and I give our quick reaction of what we think of those brackets and where Iowa State guys are seated. And then we'll do a full preview the week of the national tournament, which is also Ben's wedding week.
Woo, getting married.
So, thanks for listening to this very long recap. We don't have a time limit today on our schedule like we usually do. So we got a little...
Aiden wasn't able to hit us for stall calls, which he normally does. He normally hits us for stalling a couple times. But
Aiden gives stall calls in the back. You guys just can't see him. So we just let loose today.
Yeah.
Talked way too long. But like I said, we have a quick hit reaction to the brackets for you to listen here after this segment. So as always, guys, thanks for listening and enjoy that quick reaction. Guys, we're back, immediately back. We just watched the NCAA championship seeds and brackets come out. Some very interesting brackets for Iowa State here. I'm just going to quickly read what the seeds are to start. So Evan Frost is the number 11 seed, Jacob Frost, number 9, Paniro Johnson, number 4, Cody Chittum, number 16, Aiden Riggins, number 30, MJ Gaitan is number 23, Evan Bachman is number 13, and Daniel Herrera is number 28. So I put that out. As I'm looking at my tweet that Aiden has up on the screen, if you're watching, I forgot to add the word seed to Daniel Herrera. But
I think people can probably gather that context from the rest of the tweet.
Ben, give me your initial thoughts.
Initial thoughts are, I don't think I'm too surprised by any one seed. I like seeing Panero get a 4 seed. I think the last time he won a Big 12 tournament was more surprising, so he got like a 13 seed or something like that. So I like seeing that he had to go 4 seed, getting rewarded for his body of work there. And everyone else, I think, is pretty fairly seeded. What's surprising to me, if you would have told me that Jacob Frost got a higher seed than Evan Frost before Big 12 started, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But obviously Evan had not the best tournament at Big 12, whether that be injury related or whatever it was. So yeah, Jacob being a 9 seed, Evan being an 11 seed, that was something that's like, oh, okay, that's how we're going to roll with that. But everyone else, I think, is Cody Chittum's is disappointing, but not in the fact that I think they misseeded him. Disappointing the fact that he's better than a 16 seed, but again, similar to Evan, because of the way the tournament went, you have to seed him there. So, that was disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess it's just another one of those where you kind of started to feel good about where things were maybe heading once we got like Big 12 brackets and Big 12 seeding, and then you kind of just now see where the cookie crumbled, right? And it just kind of sucks. But I think my initial was to be shocked about Evan Frost, but you and I were talking about it, and people already tweeting like, someone said Evan Frost got robbed. So explain to the pod why Evan Frost at number 11 makes sense given how Big 12s went for him.
Yeah, I think before Big 12s, I think Evan was pretty squarely in line for a number 3 seed. And I think if he wrestles, to a 3rd place finish or a 2nd place finish, if he doesn't win, I think he's probably still top 5 seed at that weight. You can write it off as just one match type of deal. But unfortunately, when you finish 7th and there's 6 bids available and you have to get an at-large, that kind of takes away a lot of the resume that you built up. Like, I understand his regular season resume is great and is what it is, but this is also sport of what have you done for me lately? And when you have to be frank, not a bad tournament, unfortunately, that's the result you get, is you get a seed that's lower or higher, depending on how you view it, than what you'd expect. I think life's easier as a number 3 seed, but I also don't mind Evan's path because I know how good he can be. And it's one of those situations when you're as good as Evan Frost is, seeding matters a little bit just so you can have an easier path, but I don't know that his path would have changed that much if he was a number 3 seed. I still think he's got to go through very similar guys. I mean, let's just go through his path. So his first round match is against Tyler Wells of Minnesota. I think that's a pretty, not an easy win, because there's no such thing as an easy win as we found out in Big 12s. But that's one I'd expect Evan Frost to win. Second round is against Connor McGonigal from Virginia Tech. Good wrestler. Again, one that I'd expect a healthy Evan Frost to win. And then after that, he gets the number 3 seed, where he was likely supposed to be, Nasir Bailey from Little Rock. And Bailey beat Evan Frost by tech fall last year. I don't think that result carries over to this year. I think Evan's a much better wrestler than he was last year and is able to fight off. He's a freshman last year, so what are freshmen's biggest weaknesses? The mat wrestling, right? So he had a tough time getting out on bottom. Evan's gotten a lot better at that, so I'd love to see that match. I think that's an excellent match. If he finds a way to win that one, you get Drake Ayala. So I don't know that his seeding necessarily impacts the results that he's going to be able to get. It's not like he got totally screwed in this. He's good enough for his seed to not matter.
Yeah, I would say Evan's bracket, when just, the past, 15 minutes we were reviewing them, I think Evan's path is my favorite one. I definitely like him on the Drake Ayala side of the bracket way more. Just because I feel like I like him in that rematch if they do end up going head to head, depending, of course, how the tournament works out. So agree with you. I think initially the shock was like, 11. But like you said, yeah, it is good perspective. And I hope people understand that. Yeah, ultimately Evan's bracket probably wouldn't be much different. So looking at the other ones, how you feeling? I don't feel super great.
I pretty much hate everyone else's bracket. I think the only one that I don't super hate is MJ Gaitan's, which is interesting because he's the number 20 some odd seed?
23, I think.
Yeah, 23.
Already
He's got Alex Kramer from Central Michigan in the first round, which this might be pretty biased of me, a big conference bias called SEC bias. This is SEC bias. Central Michigan, they can't have anyone good, right? That's obviously not true. I'm sure Alex Kramer's a great wrestler, but I don't know anything about him. So it's just one of those things like, oh, I like MJ in that matchup. Second round would likely be against Danny Wask of Navy, who I know is good. I've seen Danny Wask wrestle before. He is good. And if I remember right, Aiden Riggins took Danny Wask to the wire earlier this year in that one of those first dual meets Iowa State had. And one of them was against Navy. And I remember Riggins had him, again, this is typical Riggins earlier in the year, but had a single leg, was about to finish, wasn't able to finish it, and he would have beat Wask. So I like Gaitan in that, especially in a second round match, because then Wask doesn't have a lot of time to prepare for Gaitan. And one thing Dresser said time and time again, I would hate to draw MJ Gaitan because he's one of those guys that if you can prepare for him, you know what to look for, you know how to feel him out and things like that. If you don't have time to prepare for him, get ready because he's going to be hunting an arm and a head and he's going to try to pin you. So big fan of the first two matches there. And then his third round match would be against Levi Haynes of Penn State, which this is a fun fact. Levi Haynes and MJ Gaitan wrestled in high school in one of those Who's Number One tournament things, and MJ Gaitan beat Levi Haynes. It was not a pin. He beat him just square up wrestling. Now, that said, their career trajectories have gone in not totally different directions. MJ's still a good wrestler, but Levi Haynes has cemented himself as one of the best in the nation. So I don't think MJ beats him, but there is a little bit of history there. So I don't hate MJ's bracket. I think he has a real possibility of upsetting two guys. And then if he wrestles back well, I like his chances.
So I looked it up, the matches between MJ and Levi. And it's mostly just comparing their opponents since they haven't wrestled in college. So MJ lost to Keegan O'Toole at the Big 12s. We talked about it, right? It was a tech fall. Was very limited on mobility. He's kind of injured. I think he would have lost regardless. But just for perspective, I guess, Levi Haynes wrestled against Keegan O'Toole in December and lost in sudden victory 4-1.
Yeah.
So just a little perspective there. So yeah, I don't hate his. I mostly like MJ in these like questionable situations because of how funky his wrestling is. But unfortunately, as coach has said, guys have started to figure him out. So it's kind of starting to get hard to be the fun, funky guy when everyone knows you're going to do it. So looking at other ones, gosh, I don't even know where to go with some of these. I know we talked about how Jacob Frost has a semi, it's not horrible, but it's not super great. But for some reason, I don't necessarily hate. So Jacob's the number 9 seed. His first match is going to be Jason Miranda from Stanford. Let's say he wins that match, moves on. He's most likely looking at facing Alirez, who he lost to for third place. I believe it was like 8-2. I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling my typical really confident self, but I prefer that than the latter, I guess, because I like that he's already wrestled Alirez just literally a week ago, so he already knows how he feels. I don't hate it.
Yeah, I think I do. We don't disagree that often, but this is gonna be one of those situations. Anytime you can avoid wrestling a previous national champion, I'm all for it. And unfortunately, Andrew Alirez was a national champion 2 years ago, took an Olympic red shirt last year. I don't know how he's the 8 seed. Like, if we're talking about guys getting screwed in seeding, I think Alirez got screwed. He has one loss on the year and is the 8th seed. That is tough. And then you got Josh Coderhart for Navy, who's 23-3 and is the 4 seed. So I don't know. Maybe he has a better resume. Jesse Mendez, Ohio State, 25-3 is the 3 seed. I don't. Again, they might have better resumes, but boy, I think Alirez got screwed. And unfortunately, by proxy, I think Jacob Frost got screwed.
Saying Jacob Frost.
So maybe you're right. I would love it if you were right, and Jacob got a good feel for him, and they can put together a good game plan. But unfortunately, I think he's going to have to wrestle back really well. If he wants to earn All-American honors, which I think he can. I think there's an All-America path for Jacob Frost. I just think he's going to have to be really tough to do it. Mentally and physically tough to be able to wrestle back for third. Or not even third, but just wrestle back for All-American.
And you know what? Speaking of, you're going to have to be really mentally tough, Cody Chittum.
Yeah.
You have about, 9 days to get yourself mentally right after the tournament, the Big 12 tournament that looked like it defeated you. And now you're going to have to go and, take care of business with DJ McGee from George Mason just to end up against Tyler Kasich from Penn State, the number 1 seed, who is a terror.
Yeah, an absolute terror. I think Cody Chittum beats DJ McGee. I think that's a fine match for him. Mm-hmm. I hate the Tyler Kasich match for Chittum.
I do too.
It's the worst.
I really, really do.
Like when Chittum wrestled, the Iowa guy who was at Penn State, Ja'Cory Teamer, and Teamer was the number 2 or 3 ranked guy or whatever. I like that matchup because they had conflicting styles, and you could see a world where Chittum grinded him down, wore him out, and would be able to win. And that's exactly what happened. Tyler Kasich's not going to let that happen.
No.
That's exactly how Tyler Kasich wrestles. And I don't think you're beating him at his own game. So Chittum he's going to have to be real mentally tough. If he can beat Tyler Kasich, by all means, do it. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a really good chance he loses. So he's going to have to be really, really mentally tough and wrestle back really well. And I think he was on the path to doing that at Big 12s. I think his match against Ryder Downey, he got up for and he was ready for. You could see it. He just made one mental error at the end, and that happens.
Yeah.
But the match after that, you could see it just wasn't there for him. So I'm going to need you to be mentally tough, and I'm going to need you to just go after it. Don't get down on yourself. Life happens. David Carr lost. The great David Carr lost in the early rounds and wrestled back for third. If you lose in the early rounds, it's okay. Keep your mind right and get after it.
Yeah. It's just, yes. Maybe a chip on his shoulder will help,
Hey,
because
I'll take that.
I was just saying, you're walking into this and everyone's looking at you expecting you to lose at this point. So might as well use that to your advantage.
Yeah, let it fly. Which he does do. Cody Chittum does let it fly the majority of the time. So let's give him credit for that.
And Cody Chittum's been one of my favorites because of that. It just it's just been a little unfortunate here towards the end, but like I said, people are already expecting you to lose. So
Yep.
let's go to Bachman before I go to the other two.
Okay.
Evan Bachman, this is his final run at the national tournament. He is graduating. I am very hopeful that he is doing okay. He hurt, I believe it was his knee or something, it looked like, during his match with Ket Kaizen. He was limping pretty badly at the end of the tournament in Tulsa. So I'm curious to see how he's doing. I would just like him to just finish strong since this is the end for him. So as long as whatever injury he got, he's the number 13 seed. I feel like when I look at Bachman, I have no expectations. I just want you to do as well as you can. That's really it.
Same thing. I think he's got a winnable match. His first match against Nick Fine. His second match would likely be against Dustin Plott. That's real tough. So he's another one that's going to have to wrestle back. And he's one that has proven to be able to do it. So I like that. Wrestle back. See if you can't finish as an All-American your senior year, your final year. But if not, go the Will Feldkamp route and score a couple team points in the backside of the bracket. And see if you can help out the team score. So I think, and we'll get into this next week, but I think Iowa State has a legitimate chance to be a top 10 team if they have a really good tournament. And I think part of that is Penn State's going to score 1 billion points. They're just going to score so many points, it's going to be wild. Annoying. So the 6 through 12 gap is going to be really tight because Penn State's going to have all of those points. Penn State's going to have all the points. So the gap for everyone else is going to be pretty tight. So if you can get Bachman and Chittum and all those guys on the backside of the bracket to score you some points, good things are going to happen for you.
Some tough draws here. Aiden Riggins is going to be facing Michael Caliendo. We should pull up that video. That video of Tom Brands. I didn't even think about it. We should do it next week. God, that sucks. Aiden, it'll be fine. Sorry, not producer Aiden, but Aiden Riggins. You go wrestle your heart out in the back of the bracket. And then watch him go. Some freak situation happens and Aiden Riggins wins and then we all look stupid again. But
hey, if Aiden Riggins beats Michael Caliendo, I will I'd learn how to do a backflip and do a backflip off the podcast desk that's in the studio.
Okay.
So I'll just do I'll do a backflip off of that.
On the record.
That'll be after the wedding, so if I get injured, it's fine. Yep. At that point, my wife can't be mad at me. The wedding already happened, picture already happened, so I can get injured at that point. So yeah, if Riggins beats Caliendo, I'll teach myself how to do backflip.
And then you look at Daniel Herrera, Sweet Angel, Peanut, stole a bid, just wrestled so well in the tournament, and now he has to deal with another Hawkeye like Riggins. He's got to go up against Ben Keeter.
Yeah.
I hate that for him. That's tough. I would like to think, maybe Herrera's being bigger than Keeter can help, use your weight against him. That's tough. Yep.
It's really tough. This is another one where now I think Herrera and I think Riggins too, to some extent, can do some damage on the backside of the bracket. As long as there's not an upset on the other side of the bracket, because you get paired up. That's just how the pairings work. So as long as things go chalk for them, they're going to be wrestling another mid-20 seeded wrestler, which they can beat those guys. Unfortunately, I don't think either one of them can beat the Hawkeyes that they're paired up against. We were talking before this. It was like, I don't know how healthy Younger is, but have Herrera go against Younger every day this week and just get a feel for what Keeter is sort of like, because Keeter is a great athlete. I mean, this is a guy that was going to play 2 sports at Iowa. He's
Very
a football
athletic
player as well, very athletic. So get a feel for that athleticism. Keeter's really good on top, so Younger can't replicate that, unfortunately. But it's just a unfortunate matchup. There's a couple of those where I'm just like, oh, maybe Caliendo could have had a chance, but I think Keeter's just a bad style matchup for him.
I think so too. Just because, like we said, his athleticism, like Keeter struggled at Big Tens, and I didn't watch him wrestle, but from what I read was basically like, truly it was size. Otherwise, he's right in there with those top heavyweights. So, yeah. And then Iowa State's highest seed, Panir Johnson, coming in hot from his Big 12 championship win. He's very focused. Just quick hit. How you feeling about Panir's chances?
I like his bracket. I mean, again, it helps when you have a high seed. His first round match is against Jack. Don't know how to pronounce his last name. Geoffrey, maybe. And I forget who he wrestles for. And then his second round match is against Dylan D'Amillo, likely against Dylan D'Amillo from Ohio State. That one's going to be tough for him. That's one where we're gonna need the Panero Johnson, who wrestled in that semifinal match at Big 12s. That's what he's gonna need for this second round match, and I'd like it for the first round match too. But looks like Jack Joffrey's from Virginia, so we're gonna need the Panero Johnson from the championship and semifinal match of Big 12s to show up the entire weekend. Beat Jack by bonus points. I think he can beat Dylan D'Amillo, but that's going to be a tough match. And if he does beat him, he likely gets Kyle Parko of Iowa, who's a 5 seed. So Panero's ranked higher, is seeded higher, which I think is really fun. If you remember 2 years ago, back when Parko was still at Arizona State, they went to sudden victory, and Parko won. And it's one of those matches where Panero just kind of didn't shoot. And that was, I think, our first introduction of like, Panero, shoot! What are you doing? So we'll see which Panero Johnson we get this tournament. And hopefully it's a consistently aggressive Panero Johnson.
I agree. And if he does end up going head-to-head with Kyle Parko, respectfully, the season I've seen, I like Panero in that. If Panero ends up in that match, I'm going to assume his wrestling is pretty much like what we saw in the semifinals. So,
yep.
But, man, tough there in some places. But at least we know now, we have the picture painted, right? Next week, we'll talk to Dresser and maybe, I assume, probably Panero. Maybe, I don't know. I'm curious to see who Andy throws at us. So we'll talk to them, get maybe some updates on some of the guys and their physical status, and just see how Dresser feels about these. I'm really curious how he feels about it. And Ben and I will deep dive into more of like the details of the tournament and just more of the nitty gritty. So I'm excited. This is what we all are looking forward to, right? And this is what these guys work for. So it's gonna be a good time. So we'll be back. We'll be back next week. Thanks for hanging in there. This was by far the longest episode we've had in a long time. So
yep.
But as always, thanks so much for tuning in and listening to us ramble away. And shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fareway. As always, as I continue to say, all of this is courtesy of their support, and I will be headed to Philly next week because of them. So go get your groceries at Fareway, and we'll be back.